transported by the death of my dear and longtime friend John. He was a kind and gentle man. I remember an evening spent with him at the Shrine Auditorium when he and I and another good friend traveled by limousine to see Bruce Springsteen in concert. The limo was provided by John, who insisted we go in style to see the boss. We stood up through the whole concert and clapped and sang and cheered. It was wonderful, of course, and being transported by limo and spending time with John made it very special indeed. I will miss him on this earth. This one comes from Katie. I was so very blessed to meet John and other counselors at Thelma 6 years ago. I recognized immediately that John cared deeply for his clients and was always their strongest advocate. John seemed to know in addition to helping with sobriety, his patients truly needed someone to be kind to them. John's kind heart was known by all of us who were fortunate enough to work with him. He was a friend to all of us, even a newcomer like me. He had great stories to share. We loved hearing about his travels. His beautiful sandwiches on homemade bread were legendary and made with love by Adele. He spoke often of fun activities with Adele and, of course, sports, especially baseball. John's courage in dealing with his illness was inspirational. Even when he was having treatment and not feeling well, he asked about the patients, co-workers, and about our family members. He found strength and comfort attending Bible study and shared that experience. What a great privilege it has been to know John, and I will remember many good things about John, but I will never forget his kindness. This next one comes from Cousin Betty. John Strouse was a good man. His quiet demeanor and nice smile were a constant. He handled his illness with amazing grace. Our neighborhood has lost a wonderful man. Always helpful, upbeat, and he never failed to acknowledge my dog, Molly. She loved him too. We'll miss you, John. You will always be in our hearts and minds. This one comes from Cousin Chicky. While we lived on opposite coasts as children, John and I, born in the same year, then months apart, we managed to see each other every 5 years or so. My favorite memory I have is visiting John in Bidford Pool, Maine, where he was teaching at a men's college and loving the coastal town where he lived. We awoke one morning, put the big pot on flame, walked down to the lobster pound, bought a huge lobster, and I proceeded to make us bacon, eggs, and lobster with drawn butter. Thought I had died and gone to heaven, still my most memorable meal ever. John and I managed to get together every few years as we became adults and lived on the same coast, me visiting down south where he lived with Adele and shared her grandchildren, whom he loved dearly. Then he, with or without Adele, would visit the San Francisco Bay Area, and we would get together and yuck it up. I will always remember his shy ways, his sense of humor, his gentleness, and his kindness. This one is from Kathleen. Trying to find a favorite story or memory was a challenge because I have so many. I first met John around 1997 when a family member went through the treatment program at Lawrence Memorial. John was our family counselor. What sticks out in my mind from the first meeting was John's overall demeanor. To say he was calm and soft-spoken is an understatement. I had never been to a family group before. I remember asking John why those of us who were alcoholics were being called normies, as if there was something wrong with us. I asked a lot of questions that day, which of course horrified my parents because they were shocked that I was even speaking, let alone making trouble. There was never any questions that seemed to faze John. He was the epitome of what a soothing, low-key counselor should be. It was his serenity that inspired me to learn more about this family disease. A few years later, after I'd finished my alcohol and drug counseling certification at UCLA, I secured an internship at the Peninsula Recovery Center in San Pedro. The clinical director assigned a staff member to train me. And lo and behold, who did he pair me with? But John Strouse. John and I spent the next 7 years working side by side at PRC. I learned more about him than I can explain. We discovered that we were both of Irish descent. I finally remember that after I told him how sweet it was of Adele to make him a sandwich for lunch each day, he showed up the next day with my very own handmade sandwich. This is for you, Kathleen, from Adele. As John and I worked together through the years, we were paired up regularly and would co-facilitate process groups together. I I will forever miss his laughter and the kind, thoughtful man who was so incredibly patient, the caring man who listened to me during some of my toughest times, the generous man who was able to teach me how to be a counselor, and the gentle man who was my friend and so graciously became a part of my life. God bless you, John. You will always remain in my heart.
It just struck me sitting in the corner. I want to be sure you look at the different photos. The one right by the window is John and a woman named Rose, and they're both working for CWA, Communication Workers of America. And they were part of everybody in that part of CWA, and they were striking against their union. So there they are standing outside. Rose has an umbrella, and John's got a cigar in his mouth. Okay, any of my family want to get up here? Not yet? Okay. Please open this to all of you. I would love to hear Billy. Can you come up?
4 years ago, when I found out John was sick, I came to the hospital to visit him and support him in his first surgery. And about that time, my mother became very ill, and I got disconnected from that process. And then when I found out John died, I couldn't believe it. In this room are 3 people. Alan Berger, who made it possible for me to become the therapist that I was. Jerry McDonald, who helped me become the administrator that I am. And my friend John Strouse, who helped me become the man I am. My brother was in prison at Folsom, and I believe it was John's aunt who lived in Sacramento. And somehow he and I hooked up. We were going to drive up there, and he was going to stop and spend time with his aunt, and I was going to go to the prison to visit my brother. And he pulled up in front of my house in this little red Pinto, and as I approached the car with my bag, I heard Elvis Presley music coming from the car. And I said, oh, wait a minute, I don't know. By the time I got my bag in the car, John Coltrane was playing. And 5 minutes after we got in the car, the music stopped, and it was a nonstop conversation from Los Angeles all the way to Sacramento. I had my visit, I came back, and it was a nonstop conversation all the way back to LA. I hear a lot about John's gentleness and what a gentleman he was, but John was a very strong, focused man. He believed deeply in what he did, was grateful for his recovery, and he shared a lot of that with me. He loved Adele dearly and took a great pride in being in her presence and being scolded by her, and we would have these conversations. And my approach to my work was very different than John's. And I used to wonder what was wrong with him, that he didn't do it the way I did. And it wasn't his problem, it was mine. And when I found my soul for the work that I did, it became very much like John's. I love John dearly, and will miss him enormously. And I did not know how to come here today and not say that. I love you, Adele, and I guess that's all I have to say.
You know, I think it's a testimony how many people from South Bay Hospital with the team we had. Could you guys all stand up, please? There's many of you out there in the audience. A very magical thing happened at South Bay Hospital. Under Jerry's direction, we became an unbelievable team. And there was all kinds of characters to this team, right? Marilyn Sears is out there. You know, you've got me, you've got Billy, you've got Frank Deffrey, you know. But a team needed to have something that held it together. And that was John. I mean, John was just this solid person all the time. He could understand things from every point of view, and he wouldn't polarize with you or with anybody on the team. And he'd always be putting principles before personality and helping to bring a balance to the situation. And we needed him, didn't we? I mean, he was such an important part of what we were doing. One of my greatest regrets is I didn't get to go to a Bruce Springsteen's concert with him, because I remember when you went there with John in the limousine. So, you know, John and I talked about, John was a big boxing fan. And so he won some tickets one time to, I forgot where we went, I think it was the Coliseum. He says, so Al, you know, we haven't gone to a Springsteen's concert, but let's go to a boxing thing. So we rent tuxedos, we get the limousine, right, and we show up to get his tickets, and we're up in the bleachers somewhere. But John says, let's let that go, let's just enjoy this night. And we had a great time. The only two guys sitting up in the nosebleeds with tuxedos on. Everybody's looking at these guys like, what's going on? But that's who John was. It didn't matter what was happening, it was okay. And that's the gift that he brought as a counselor to families. When you were in his care, you knew that he cared for you. When you were being directed by him or guided by him, you knew that it was coming from deep inside of him. There was no ego in it. He was interested in what was best for you and how he could help you deal with and face this devastating illness that he recovered from in his life. His love for Alcoholics Anonymous just needs to be mentioned because Bill loved the principles of the program. I mean, John loved the principles of the program, the principles that Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob shared with us. And he really, you know, he lived them. You know, the thing I would say about him, in all the time I've worked with people, is John took care of himself in that way. He went to his meetings, he did his work, he walked like he talked. And, you know, John, I'm going to miss you. I love you. And I feel like I'm a better man because I've got you.
Name's John Bunting, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
I met John in South Bay Hospital. He became one of my counselors, and he was so neat. He always had this sweater draped over his shoulders. There wasn't a wrinkle in it, and it was always just hung there. I don't think he ever wore them. I think he just put them over his back. And his hair was always impeccable, never a hair out of place. And when he became my counselor, I became his terrorist. I'd sneak up behind him, pull his sweater off. I'd sneak up behind him and mess his hair up. I spent 28 days in South Bay Hospital, and I spent a lot of time with John. John's one of the reasons I'm here today. He was a kind man. He was gentle. He didn't yell and scream at me like all the other ones did. Rightfully so. But, John and I talked one-on-one quite a bit. And he helped me get through that program. He helped me stay sober. After I got out of South Bay Hospital, John and I talked, and I told him I